This is one of my favorite subjects because my friends who are new to thoroughbreds all seem to think I'm a wizard because they'll mention, oh, I got a horse, his jockey club name is such and such. And in a couple of minutes, I'm like, oh, well, he raced so many times and here's his dad and he was bred in such and such state. And they're like, how did you do that? And the really cool thing is that all of those tools, for the most part, are available to anybody and they're free. So we're going to walk you guys through just sort of the basics to how to learn more about your thoroughbred, especially if you're new to the breed or you just aren't sure how to research your horse. So I'm going to screen share. We've got lots of visuals to show you guys tonight. I just have to find the right one now, which something I've already lost. There it is. Okay. All right, so we will start on Equibase. So I'm now really spoiled. If someone comes up to me with a quarter horse, I have no idea how to find any information about them at all. So much information for registered thoroughbreds is available on Equibase. It's like a really nice, like who's who to all of your horses and what they've been doing. So when you go to Equibase, this is essentially what you'll see on the homepage. Usually there's a nice big ad at the top, so you just have to work your way past that. And we're going to be looking at a lot of my own horses tonight because any chance I have to talk about my own horses, I will jump on. So just go right over to the search bar, plug your horse's name in. Jobber Bill is my man. And that's going to bring up your horse profile. So this is all the good basic information about your horse. So at a glance here, you can see that Jobber Bill is an Ontario bred, chestnut gelding, foaled May 17th, 2009. There's his bloodline information and his race record, career statistics. So when you're researching a horse that you don't know for the first time, some good things to keep an eye on here is a number of starts and earnings. So you can get an idea of how long of a career your horse might have had. What we call a war horse is anything that had more than 50 starts, generally speaking. So Jobber was not quite a war horse, but he raced for a good long time. He made 34 starts, finished first only twice, but he was really good at coming in second. And he you can see he paid $78,000. The page will also list as of the last start, because of course, horses change hands pretty frequently, especially horses running up the claiming ranks. So as of his last start, there's his jockey, trainer, and owner. One thing, of course, that always stays the same is his breeder. So scrolling all the way down, the statistics section will show you the years that he made his starts and where he was the most successful. So he had a pretty good 4-year-old year and then kind of tapered off as his career went on. If you click over to the results tab, you're going to see every track that he ran at. And you can see he was a claimer for essentially his entire career, for the most part. He ran, he was an Ontario bred and he did most of his running up in Ontario. So Woodbine and Fort Erie are the two tracks up in Ontario. Other information you'll see here is the race date, the race on the card, race type, breed. For the most part, you'll just see thoroughbred here, and his finish. So if we click through to one of these races, let's see, we'll pick a good one for him. We'll look at one of the last races he won. If you tap through, we'll go back to that tab. There's a little icon there for chart. That's going to bring up the chart for that race. So the chart is, sort of the rundown of how the race went. It's going to show you the full order of finish, information about the race itself, including the distance, the surface it was run on, and then there's like a little play-by-play of the whole race in the description at the end. I think I'm maxing out the power of my internet tonight by having this many tabs open, so we're going to give it a minute to load the whole PDF. I have done too much interneting today. It is very tired. You can do it, Equibase. There it is. So you can see the type of race that he ran. He did run a lot of what we call a conditional race. So that's 3-year-olds and upwards, which have never won 2 races. So horses who have never won a race, have not won a race this year. Usually those go, I think, all the way up to maybe have not won 4 races. Kristen might correct me if I'm wrong there, but a lot of times, when horses are retiring, it might be because they, what we call, ran out of conditions. So they're going to end up being an open company where they're not going to be competitive anymore. And sometimes that's a good time for connections to choose to retire them. Jobber won so infrequently, I think he rarely ran out of conditions. So he just kept on going. So here you see the whole order of finish for the race, includes the jockey in parentheses. Lots of other information that may or may not be relevant to you as an OTTB owner. What I always find interesting is the footnotes section, where it gives you the description of the race. So if you're looking at a horse for the first time, or you're looking back on a horse that you've had and trying to put sort of the pieces together, you can actually learn quite a bit about, a horse's running style. You can learn things like they lug in or out, if they had a did not finish or a DNF, what happened in that race. Was he injured, or did he trip and lose his jockey? Those are, 2 very different outcomes, and you'll learn a lot about your horse either way. So in this race, Jobber Bill was in range, had a good position on the turn, and with the lead from the forepath at the top of the stretch, drew off. Again, one of the few times that Jobber actually made it to the wire first. Most of the time it was Jobber Bill followed. But lots to learn here on the page, and you can really get sucked into reading a lot of these over and over again. I'm going to close that one out. Awesome. Here we go. If you're looking at last connections, so the trainer and owner for a lot of these horses, those are going to be people that had the horse most recently. You can go back through and check the charts and figure out where horses might have changed hands. So for a lot of horses that are now off track thoroughbreds, they might have changed hands, as many as 3 or 4 times in their careers, especially if they had a long career. Generally, if you see the owner and breeder are the same person, that horse might have stayed with that owner breeder for his entire career. Sometimes you can find these people on Facebook or on Twitter. A lot of the racing community is on Twitter, and that's not a bad place to reach out to if you're looking for a little more personal information about a horse, or even pictures. Sometimes folks have a lot of pictures, especially baby pictures, and they'll like to pass those on. I have actually tried to reach out to all of these folks. I've connected with both Bryce and Stephen on Facebook, and it's been nice to kind of swap notes back and forth and just keep them updated about what Jobber's up to now. So sometimes you can have a lot of luck with that, and then other times you'll just find people that either aren't on Facebook, aren't on social media, or just aren't that interested in keeping up. So Jobber does not have an auction history. I'm going to pull up a horse who did. But these are the basic things that you're going to see on an Equibase page. So there's a ton of information to glean there. And of course, how you interpret that information is a little bit up to you. Let me bring up another horse. Papa Al competed at the makeover in 2021. And what is cool about Papa Al, once this loads, you'll notice at the top, he has a bar here that Jobber Bill did not. So this bar says TV stats, and that's a drop-down menu. So if I open that up, you'll discover this horse actually also ran in quarter horse races and MX's mixed races. So those are sprints open to both quarter horses and thoroughbreds. So you'll see this a lot in horses that ran on Western tracks, and then up into Canada as well. There were a lot of mixed races available at the sprint level. So Papa L actually has several race records. He has a thoroughbred race record, and then he'll have a quarter horse record and a mixed record as well. So when we put this information into our system for the makeover, we add all of those records together to, look at how many horses or how many races a horse ran over his entire career. So he didn't hit the board in his quarter horse sprints. Let's see how he did in his mixed races. Didn't hit the board there either. So he was definitely most successful in thoroughbred company. But you will find that sometimes on certain horses, especially if they did race out west. Let's see where Papa Al ran, mostly in California. Oh, and then went up into Canada. And then, he connected with a Saskatchewan-based trainer. So you can kind of follow where his career physically took him around the country. And then when he was able to connect with his trainer, Jody Bush, and they won the freestyle last year. So very cool little horse. So that's always worth looking into if you happen to notice this on your horse's Equibase page. Let's see. Oh, Kristen, you wanted to touch on, right now what we've been looking on is horses that are registered and had a race record, but it is possible that you might come across an OTTB that was never registered.
Right, so
and has no race record, but sometimes those horses are still there.
Right, so the way that the Jockey Club registry works is you can actually name a horse or work a horse on the racetrack side before it's registered. And so what happens on occasion is you'll get a horse either based on its pedigree or it's got a name, and you'll go and look it up. Here you'll find it on Equibase. You'll go and try and get a tip number for the horse and it says not found. And in that instance, it's most likely that the horse isn't actually registered yet. In those cases, when we flip over to my screen, I'll show you where you can check a horse's registration status so that before you buy the horse, you can make sure that it is registered. And then if you end up with a horse that's not registered, the best thing to do is going to be to call the registry and have them walk you through what the outstanding requirements are for registration. It could be anything from missing photos to missing fees to a missing stallion service certificate. But just a kind of cautionary note, if you find the horse on Equibase, that does not mean it's registered. You always want to go to the Jockey Club registry to confirm.
And what might those horses look like on, like, is it possible for us to have a name but not be registered?
It is. So you can name your horse before registration is complete. Once a foal is reported on a live foal report, you can actually name that horse. But again, that does not mean that it's registered. And that is a little bit different from probably quarter horses. Quarter horses are named at time of registration, whereas thoroughbreds can be named anytime once they're reported as a foal. They can be registered as an unnamed horse, and then they can be named later. So always sort of tell people, make sure you confirm, either get the papers in your hand. If you can't get the papers in your hand, check registry.jockeyclub.com before you buy the horse to confirm it is in fact a registered thoroughbred.
Yeah, especially, yeah, if they can get on Equibase kind of under the radar.
Right, so someone can work a horse, you know, some people will start working the horses out before they finish registering them to see if they think they're going to be a good racehorse, and if they end up not, then they won't complete the registration. So it is rare, but it does happen. And so I know that there are a few thoroughbreds out there that I've had to talk to some folks about, nope, that's not registered, and you know, here's what's outstanding. So,
but it is possible then for a private owner, you know, in a second career to then finish that registration process and still be able to.
Yep, you pretty much will at that point, especially if it's an older horse, you'll essentially start the process over. So they'll pull DNA, get photos, get all the paperwork redone, just to make sure that we've still got the same horse who started the registration process.
Nice. That's good to know that anybody can still finish that process.
Yep. And I would just kind of relate it to that, but not exactly related, is I always tell people too, and we'll talk a little bit about tattoo research and things like that. Always make sure that the horse you have is the horse that you think you have. We had a person kind of right when TIP started, and they thought they had, and I'm gonna make up names and numbers here, but the 2009 out of Changing Tunes, and she sent me photos, and I said, I don't think that's the horse you have. And she said, no, that's who they told me that it was. And I was like, well, the horse we registered had 4 white socks and a star, and your horse is a plain bay, so I don't think it is. So I started clicking through that pedigree, and I looked at the dam's previous foals, and lo and behold, the horse that they had was actually the 3 years older brother. So they had the pedigree correct, year of birth and the name were wrong. And so again, get those papers if you can, and if you can't, you know, reach out to Jockey Club and try and get confirmation that you got the right horse.
And that's, you know, a resource that we offer with the RRP is, you know, links. We have a downloadable bill of sale. So if you're getting a horse right off the track and the connections don't have a bill of sale ready, you can download that for free and fill that out and print it. And that's good just to have a paper trail that, you know, that transaction happened and that horse changed hands. And of course, there is the retired from racing form with the Jockey Club, which we encourage everyone to fill out. And that should help with a little peace of mind, you know, that you're not going to buy that horse and then turn around and race it again. So sometimes that can help. encourage
And
connections.
the retired from racing too, the bonus of that process, in addition to the horse being permanently retired, is the horse is re-ID'd prior to the papers being canceled. So part of that process involves sending in photos. So as part of that, you'll know you've got the right horse when you get back on the other end, because someone has looked at it and said, yep, same horse that we registered.
That actually happened for someone registering horses for the makeover for 2020, 2021 for the mega makeover. And they found out that horses had been swapped at the track. It was two very similar plain bays, and they actually raced as the other horse for a while.
And it wouldn't, and they didn't go the makeover. No one ever probably would have known, because it was two geldings, I think.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, you would have no way of knowing. So, and I think as a nod to that, the owner made his USCF show name Imposter, which I thought was kind of a fun.
Yeah, we had to undo a lot, because we had to undo a tip number. We had to undo a declaration, I think, for a horse. There were some other steps involved with that one.
So it can happen. Yeah.
It can.
Okay. But yeah, sounds like the Jockey Club can get you straightened out if it does.
We can. We have very nice customer service people that are happy to help.
Good to know. So something else you can do to help find an unknown horse, or a horse whose name you don't know, if you put unknown into the search bar at Equibase and run that through, you have to look beyond the horses who are actually named unknown, which makes things a little confusing. But if you scroll all the way down, didn't find your horse, you can click here to search by year of birth and dam name. Awful way to find a horse if you're not sure what his name is, but you know the year he was born and the name of his mother. I think a lot of people also use this to try to find half siblings to horses that they have, so horses out of the same dam. So that can be kind of a fun way, you know, if you're like, oh, I know that, you know, like I know that Jobber has a full brother. He's Jobber Bill, and the brother is named Pre-Bill, but I think Jobber was born first, so that was a little odd. But I've used that to figure out where Pre-Bill is, and he's actually standing stud in Jamaica. So I don't think I'll be getting my hands on him anytime soon, but you never know. Yeah, that unknown in the search bar can bring you there. So let's see, we talked a little bit about race levels and information you can glean from that. If you are just sort of a recreational, you know, OTTB enthusiast, and you're like me and just really like to watch your own horse do things, if you go to that results tab, this is where the date of the race and the race number can really come in handy. So just as an example, let's see, September 13th, 2015, race 6. I have maybe watched this race more than a few times just to watch my guy win. But if you go over to your track website, and sometimes these are also on YouTube, I have the Fort Erie website already pulled up. I can just plug in the year. What did I just say that was? 2015? I forgot already. That might not have been it. 2013, 2015. All right.
Surprised you don't have a party on that day to celebrate the win.
Probably should. Yeah. Like have a little champagne, wear a little fast.
Remember that time you won?
Like, remember that time? He's won a lot more as an OTTB than he has as a TB. So, all right. And race 6, I will not subject everyone to watching Jobber's race, but now you know where to find it. But that's what's really cool, is that, you know, a lot of these tracks have these historical replays going back many, many years. So even if you have an older horse, you can still find these races and watch them. And I just think it's kind of fun, you know, that you can go back and actually watch your horse on the track and see how he did. We'll watch, you know, a second. I won't make everybody watch the whole thing, but it's just kind of fun, you know, to go back and see. And you know, obviously I've watched Jobber's wins a lot more than his losses. I probably learn a lot more by watching his losses.
5, Jobber Bill, he is last. Out first was the gray.
Okay, well, he wins in the end. I know he starts out last, but regardless, you can go through, and I've done that with my other horse too, watch his races at Indy and Grand. But you know, you can learn a lot by watching the horse race. You can also, I'm sure, learn a lot by watching him lose. Maybe Jobber just didn't like mud kicked in his face. I wouldn't either. I totally understand. But that's kind of a fun thing to do. I know a lot of people also use the Horse Races Now app. Not every track is on that app, so that can be a little difficult sometimes. But I have found that if you go directly to the track, you know, and search around replays are often there, or YouTube as well. I think Woodbine has all of its replays on YouTube, so that's where I've gone to find those races. Just something fun. And we talked about looking at a chart a little bit. Every now and then you will find a horse that had a DNF, which stands for did not finish. And those are always good to look at, you know, especially if you're pointing a horse towards, you know, a little more of an intense career, just to know like what was the nature, you know, of that did not finish. If I remember correctly, I've looked at this chart and it is basically like Jobber Bill got tired, which like same, so fine. But every now and then, you know, you'll run into like, ooh, the horse was fanned off, and that might be something that's worth investigating. That doesn't necessarily have to mean a red flag, because sometimes, you know, they'll van horses off just to be cautious. Horse is totally fine, but it's just something to be on top of, you know, as an OTTB owner, just to know, you know, what you might be getting into. Let's see.
Occasionally you might learn that your horse is very stubborn too. I've seen a few videos where the horse will come out of the starting gate and take a hard right and be like,
yeah,
not today. So you might find that your horse had some quirks when he was in the racing.
Yeah, this one's pretty funny. Jobber Bill in touch, chase late turn, tired along rail, finished the race and walked off. So it's funny because actually the description here says he finished the race and then walked off, and the chart says did not finish, but regardless, did not sound like a major injury. I think he turned right back around and was in a race again in a couple weeks and was fine. So now I know if Jobber Bill's tired, which he gets tired, maybe don't push him so hard. Other things you might look for in the race records, you know, if you're assessing a prospect, maybe for a second career, you'll want to look for long gaps. Some of these long gaps that you'll see, like Jobber is based in Ontario. So there's a gap here from October of 2013 until May of 2014. To me, that's not a red flag, because like I'm in Western New York, Ontario is just a stone's throw away. I know what it's like here between October and May, and no one's doing anything. So I totally get, you know, if they're not shipping a horse down to Florida to train, you know, and race down there, like chances are everyone's just turned out for the winter, or they're in training somewhere inside. So that's not a huge red flag to me. So having a little bit of a knowledge, you know, of the racing program at the tracks where these horses are based is helpful. But other gaps that you might see maybe in the middle of a season for a couple of months, that might be something to also look at. And you can compare that with the charts and see what information you can learn, you know, of like, okay, maybe the horse was a little sore and had to have a couple months off, or, you know, maybe he just had an abscess, or, you know, maybe the whole track was closed down. So there's things you can look into, but that's, you know, some good stuff to keep in mind as you're looking at these race results. Jobber raced pretty much about once a month. 2 races here in September in 2014, you know, so to me that indicates that he was pretty sturdy for the most part. He started a little bit later. His first race was at the very end of his 3-year-old year, and of course I don't know why. I haven't found anybody who could tell me why, whether he was just a little slow to mature, which wouldn't surprise me based on how he is the rest of the time. Just needed a little more time to go into training. So something else to keep in mind too. But then he raced pretty steadily all the way through. So to me, that indicates there's not a whole lot I'm going to do to him as a ranch rider that he can't physically stand up to. So just more information for the thoroughbred owner to take with them. I think I'm going to switch gears here to another horse. Yep, we're going to look at my other thoroughbred, Regal Justice. This is now my husband's horse. Actually, I think he is at the farm riding him right now while I'm here working on this webinar. So, all right, we're looking at Regal Justice because Regal Justice, who we call Shorty, he sold at auction once. He went through 2 auctions. The RNA stands for Reserve Not Attained, or Quite Attained. And that just means that he did not meet his reserve. So he did not sell at Keeneland. Keeneland mixed, that was, let's see, November 2014 breeding stock sale, and he's a 2014, so he would have been selling as a weanling, did not sell. So if you hover over the sale, it'll bring up a little pop-up window to tell you what the full sale was. Otherwise, it just gives you the sale code. So then he did sell the next year at Indiana Fall mixed sale as a yearling. So he was bred by Justice Farm. That's who consigned him to the sale. And then he was purchased by Julie Rodriguez, who was his trainer and owner through his entire career. Sold for $3,500. So a lot of these sales, if you're interested, this is something I've never done, but some people are interested enough, you can reach out to the sale and purchase a video of when the horse went through the ring. So, which can be really fun if you had a 6-figure yearling at Keeneland to buy that video and just sort of see what was going on. I did not do that for my 4-figure little claimer, but it's always an option. And then he ran his entire career at what's now called Horseshoe Indianapolis. That was Indiana Grand. So some horses, they'll have quite an auction history. Some of the horses I've been looking at recently for the makeover, it's really cool because they'll have a couple of auctions in England, and then they'll come over to the US and sell a few more times there. So it's not uncommon for thoroughbreds to change hands fairly frequently, anywhere between weaning and 2-year-olds. So sometimes you'll see, horses that sold as a weanling, sold again as a yearling, and then maybe sold again, at an under tax sale as a 2-year-old. That practice can be called pin hooking. So you'll find people that will pin hook a weanling or a yearling, and then they'll, put a little more time into it, fit it up, grow it up, and then sell it again, hopefully to make a profit. So not uncommon in the thoroughbred world if you're new to the breed. So that would not be a red flag at all to see, quite a few auctions on that auction history list. What I do think is cool is that that's all public information. You can look back and see all the times that horse sold or didn't sell. But then there is a fair number of horses that we run across that just never went through an auction at all. So they, sell privately or they're claimed. That information, you have to dig a little more to find claims. You'll have to go back through the charts, to see if a horse got claimed and changed hands that way. All right. If you come across a horse that went through and is listed with a consignor, so like right here, Shorty's listed with Paramount Sales. If I was interested to find pictures of him as a weanling, reaching out to the consignor can be a really good way to get baby pictures or pictures of him as a weanling, or potentially getting in touch with somebody who remembered him at that age. Chances are he was not named. Well, he might have been, but Regal Justice. Because Justice Farm tends to name all their horses that way. But chances are the best way to mention that horse to a consignor is to mention him by his full year and his dam's name, because oftentimes that horse won't be named until he's with his racing owner. So I might reach out to Paramount Sales and say, hey, do you have any pictures of KGS Free 2014? And that would bring up this horse. So those consignors, because they document so much of the process as they're fitting a horse up for sale, they're usually a really good source for pictures. All right, there's one more tab that we'll take a look at that not every horse is going to have on their Equibase profile. We're going to bring up Imperative, who was one of our superstars at the makeover last year. All right, so you guys will see that he has an extra tab here that says achievements. My guys were not high achievers. They don't get this tab. So achievements is any of the top rankings that this horse has achieved. So for Imperative, he was ranked 32nd by earnings in 2017 out of the top 100 Jockey Club running horses all over North America. And he was ranked 11th by earnings in 2014. And of course was a Breeders' Cup Classic participant that year as well. So if you had a high achiever, that's a cool place to learn a little bit more about them. Imperative, of course, is kind of a big name that a lot of us remember from his racing years. But you'll also find horses that reach those same levels of superstardom. We had one that was coming through the makeover this year. Let's see that our horse registrar, Sally Roberts, she puts in a ton of time every year verifying manually every horse that's registered for the makeover. So she does this exact same process and makes sure that all these horses are, recorded correctly with their full profile and the race record all up to date. So she alerted me to this cool horse, Proven Warrior. He made 74 starts and earned well over $300,000, which is cool. And his achievements, He was ranked 17th by wins in 2016. So this isn't, a super stakes horse or anything real crazy, but he still made that achievements list thanks to his race record. So always worth taking a look to see if your horse has any cool achievements to his name. If you are looking at a horse that has retired very recently, or of course is still running, we'll use Rich Strike as an example. They will also have a workouts tab. Workouts, I think on Equibase are cleared after 60 days. So a lot of horses that are now retired, you won't find this workouts tab. If you are for a workout record to try to help prove makeover eligibility, you can do two things. You can either purchase a workout record from Equine line, which we'll get into in a few minutes, or you can reach out to the RRP and we'll help determine if your horse is makeover eligible based on workouts. So the workouts tab, of course, for Rich Strike, because he is a very active racehorse, you can see all of his recent workouts for the last 60 days. So that can be kind of fun just to see, was your horse fast in the morning and slow in the afternoon, or was he fast all the time or slow all the time? All right, I think we are ready to line. So Equine line is a good place to look at pedigree information. That's going to give you a lot more information on the bloodlines than Equibase. So Equibase will show you sire, dam, and dam sire. If you want to look at the full pedigree, 5 generations, this is a good place to do it. You can view all that for free very easily on Equine line. There's also a ton more information on Equine line if you want to get into paid reporting. You can pull up a sire's entire report of everything they've ever sired. You can pull up just their top stakes horses. That's like just scratching the surface. What else can you use Equine line for? I mean, way more than I would ever personally need.
Yeah, I think some of the stuff that you were clicking through in the charts, you can run reports that will have that essentially all in one report if you don't feel like digging. And then you can always refer back to Equibase to look at videos or look at full charts or any of those things. But yeah, there's lots of race record and lots of pedigree reports if you're interested in that kind of information.
I think the advantage with digging in Equibase is that if you are a little cheap like me, that's all free, but Equine line, typically you have to pay to run most reports. So it's, it depends what it's worth to you if you want to pay for the report or if you just want to spend hours clicking through like I do. But now you can pull up the full 5 pedigree or 5 generation pedigree for a horse, which can be interesting. If you are a bloodline lover, you can look back and see if, any of your favorites are there. Of course, there's plenty of anecdotal information on the internet about, storm cats are all hot and, unbridleds are all pretty or, whatever. So, take that all with a grain of salt because a lot of those stallions have so many descendants that you're going to run the gamut of every single kind of horse out there. There are days where I could say like, oh yes, Jobber's got Stormcat on the sire side and that's why he's hot. Or then other days I'm like, he's got Stormcat, that's why he's lazy. So, it's all up to you how you choose to interpret, what you hear. But again, keep in mind, a lot of these sires with this many offspring, you're going to hit every single kind of horse in there. I do like, I've heard that this Caro line from Ireland is, good, sound, solid horses. So I'm like, yes, I will choose to believe that anecdotal thing that I've heard. And again, just read around and see what you find. And then of course, approach your horse however you would, and you decide, what those lines are good for. I do a lot with dosage. Do you know how to read the dosage chart, Kristen?
I do not.
All right. I know it has
to do with how many of the colors are up there, like the yellows and the greens. I think it has something to do with that, but I don't really know.
Yeah, and it's something having to do with breeding for stamina versus speed. So the center of distribution will tell you one way or the other. We had more of a dosage person on last year who's like, oh yes, if you see this range of number, that's a good horse for stamina. And again, with thoroughbreds, in my experience, you're going to find representatives of every type of horse among them. So, a horse might outrun its pedigree and it also might run far below its pedigree. So I would also take the dosage with a grain of salt too, that, a horse bred for stamina this horse was bred to be a sprinter and he has plenty of stamina for me. So,
I'm sorry, the colors are for the other side there at the inbreeding.
yes. Yeah. So yeah, you can see some repeat names coming back again and again in Jobber's pedigree. As they jokingly say a lot, it's line breeding if it works and it's inbreeding if it doesn't. But you will find there's line breeding is a fairly common practice in all horse breeding and animal breeding in general. So this would not be anything that I would be turned off by to see, some names coming back again and again. So nothing too scary here. Where I personally use equine line a lot in my day-to-day job, I actually used it this morning. We were featuring a thoroughbred who won the Side Saddle Hunter Championship yesterday at the Devon Horse Show, which is a pretty cool title and a prestigious win. And I knew that the horse's show name was Epilogue, but I had a pretty good feeling that wasn't going to be his jockey club name. So what I did was I went over to the USEF database and I put in, I should do this correctly, went to the horse search first, and it'll take a minute to load. Close out Fort Erie, that'll probably help. I can feel my computer fan. It's like, please stop searching things. It's too much. All right, so we'll search for this horse Epilogue. And this does rely a little bit on people putting in their full information when they get their USEF number for horses. But when we used to run Sire Madness every March, we used this pretty heavily. So as I scrolled through, I found, okay, I knew it was Ashley Glorioso that won the class, and this horse is listed as a thoroughbred, so I was pretty certain I had found my guy. So I knew, okay, if he's foaled in 1999 and his dam's name is Shared Reflections, I can come back over to Equine Line and I can put in 1999. I can put in Shared Reflections. I can click the wrong horse. It's hard when everybody's watching me. There we go. And I can find out that horse is actually Jockey Club Al Jazeera. So I can select him there and then pull up his pedigree. And then from there, I went over to Equibase, put his information in and found out that he first raced on the flat for 3 years. Then he took a short break and then he came back as a steeplechase horse for another few seasons. So that was really interesting. And that's something, of course, that's not reflected in his USEF database, but something that we can find using all the free tools available to us for thoroughbreds. So I thought that was pretty interesting. A lot of people do change the show name and they'll register the horse as something else. So, if you're buying a thoroughbred with a USEF record already and they don't come with the Jockey Club papers, if you know his year of birth and his dam's name, you can still go back and find all of his thoroughbred information, which is really neat. The thoroughbred, I think, is one of the few breeds that really has this level of detail available publicly and free, which I think is really unique. For AQHA, you need to have a membership and pull up, pay to run a horse's report and pull up all this information. So, I think this is just a really cool tool that we all have access to be able to get all of this information out there for free and really easily. So just took me a few minutes and I was good to go for the rest of my day. And then Kristen also mentioned, and I didn't realize this, that I could have also put all this information into the T.I.P. database and done it that way. So I'm going to let you screen share and you can show me how that would have worked if I had been thinking and using my tools. I'll stop the share and let you.
All right.
Over.
Maybe I can find the bottom thing. All right. Does it look like the TIP website over here?
Yes, it does.
All right. Perfect. Success. Okay. So in your case, how to look up. So we have this fancy dancy tab for horse show personnel. One of the things is resources, tip number lookup. So you could just go here and put Epilogue in and ta-da.
Yeah, see, I could have saved myself so much more time.
That is, the way that you can find, if you get a horse and they say, oh, its name is Epilogue and can't find it, this would also be a place that you could go to try and figure out who your horse is. I will say on USDF, if they have good information, it's great, but you can also go there and see thoroughbred unknown as a pedigree, which is super
Right.
helpful.
Very infuriating. Yeah, it does rely on, you know, people wanting to report that or even having that knowledge themselves to report that.
Exactly.
So.
So I am going to just click over to the registry first. I've already logged in. For those of you that don't know, the Jockey Club registry is registry.jockeyclub.com. It's free to get an account. We call it interactive registration. Just sign up on the homepage. I've already gone ahead and logged in, so we just jump right into things. But if you don't have an account, I encourage you to get one because one, you can use some of the tools in here, but also you'll need one to register for a tip number. So just jumping back to what we talked about with unregistered horses. So if you get a horse and you think, I just need to make sure that this horse is really registered, you're going to go over here under this blue menu and click check registration status. And like Kristen, I will use my horse.
Oh, your horse has a cool name.
I renamed him.
Okay, well, you picked a good name.
Is much more pedigree related than the original name. So this is his information, and you can see he is a registered thoroughbred. If he was not, it would say non-registered thoroughbred up at the top. And I should have been more creative and looked up one, but that's the very first place that you can go and quickly see that the horse is registered or not. If he wasn't completed, you could come down here and it will tell you some information about what's pending. Or as I said, sometimes the easiest thing to do is just to call the registry and have them walk through with you what is outstanding. So I'm going to go back to the registry again and just point out a couple of things for off-track thoroughbred owners that you might be interested in. If you are buying a horse that was born in the last couple of years where it has a digital certificate, you can click here to see where the current digital certificate assignment is. So in the past, if you had a horse with paper certificates, oftentimes they're just lost and you had to call the trainer and call the owner. So the one nice thing about digital certificates now is you can go there, click and see who has the horse's papers, sorry, the digital certificate. So I can actually just put in our favorite Derby winner and you can see that his digital certificate is currently assigned to Belmont Park. So that will help narrow down a little bit about who you need to go to ask for a copy of the papers or to have them transfer the digital certificate to you. The bonus of that then is if you know where the papers are, you can ask the people to then help you out and do the sold as retired from racing so that the horse will be not eligible to be raced anymore. That is currently a paper process. So this is actually just going to download a form. This requires the signature of both the seller and the purchaser. And then, as I said earlier, requires you to send in photographs. The horse's identity is confirmed, and then the papers are marked sold as retired from racing and sent back to the purchaser. So it's great because it does give the sellers a little bit of peace of mind that the horse isn't going to be raced. That does happen occasionally, that horses that were sold not to be raced, and even sometimes people write in Sharpie not to be raced on the papers, and all that's really doing is defacing the papers, and the person who then has the horse can send them back in and say, please issue me a duplicate. Someone wrote all over my papers, and I own the horse now. So, or the racing office might just accept them that way. So always go through the official channels, the sold as retired from racing process to make sure your horse isn't going to be raced again. Other things you might notice when you pull up your horse on Equibase that it's listed as a H, which is a horse. That means intact male. If your horse is now gelding, I do encourage people to go ahead and report the gelding just so that the records are accurate, and then also your tip card will be correct. You can transfer ownership on here. Essentially all that's doing is updating the database. We are not an ownership registry, so it's not legal title, but it is good to have your updated contact information with the registry for the horse. If unfortunately your horse dies or passes away, you can report the death also here. And then if you click this apply for a tip number, it's actually going to take you back over to the tip website. So we'll go back there in a moment. I did just want to show quickly how to research a tattoo. So you click on this link, and there are two ways that you can do a tattoo research. The first is if you can actually read the whole tattoo correctly, then you can put it in. And it's always going to be a letter followed by 5 numbers. If you end up with a horse that's 4 numbers and a letter at the end, then you have purchased yourself a racing quarter horse. So if there are a few other breeds that have tattoos. The majority are thoroughbreds, but there are some other racing breeds that have tattoos. So if you can't find it here, we do occasionally have to send people over to the AQHA to have tattoos researched, and ends up being appendix quarter horses, particularly out west. If they're coming from Oklahoma or west, there's a potential for racing quarter horses with tattoos. So
are they still doing lip tattoos now for quarter horses, or have they switched to microchips too?
I believe they are switching to, or in the process of switching to microchips, but I think they are still tattooing some breeds, but I'm not 100% sure. So again, this is my horse. That's his tattoo. You can't read the whole tattoo. You can do a parcel search. So I know he's a 2011, and I can read the 0 and the 5, and he is dark bay, gelding. Yep, he's got white on everything. And so that narrows it down to, so I probably won't be able to figure out which one is from that, but you could narrow down, not quickly anyway, you could narrow it down further. So if I searched again and put in, say, I can read the 2, maybe that will give me less. There he is. So that, if I click on this now, I'm like, yep, that sounded like him, and lo and behold, it is him. So the tattoo research can get a little tricky, especially if your horse has just a little bit of white on their face or just a little bit of white on one heel. So if you're not successful in searching for your tattoos, always just kind of look with a real close eye at their heels and at their face, or in their coat, to see if there's any scattered white hairs in there, and then change your search accordingly. If you really can't figure it out, there is an option also to do a search through with the Jockey Club. They can help. So there is a link. Click this here, I think the 25 and over, and it will send in a request to help identify the horse. So there's a few ways you can use that resource. If you really don't know who your horse is, or if you want to confirm that you got the right horse, that's a great spot to start. Similarly, horses in 2017 forward are all microchipped. So you can do the same type of lookup on this page here for a microchip number, and it will give you that same information that the tattoo lookup did. You can also, on this page, if your horse now has a chip, you can report it, which I think is required for the RRP horses. You can go here and report your horse's chip. And then if you want to purchase microchips, you can also do that here on the website.
If you're going to do a microchip, please search your horse first for a microchip before you add another one. We've had horses show up to the makeover with like 3 chips.
There are a lot of, the microchip is just like all the other markings. So 1, scan it for any chips first, and 2, verify the horse's identity before you stick chip in and report it, because chip number in the wrong horse doesn't do anybody any good. So always take a few steps before you chip and report the chip, and make sure that 1, you're not putting another chip in, and 2, that you've got the right horse being reported. So
chips
always verify.
Yep. And we also learned a couple of years ago that in Canada, they're chipping in the muzzle. So if you have a horse that was bred or, started racing in Canada, check in there first too. And not just
check noses, and then check they're generally on the left side in the nuchal ligament, but scan from the top of their ears down. If you're not finding anything, go on the other side, do the same thing, scan down their neck just to make sure it didn't migrate. And then if it does end up that, lo and behold, you find the first chip again after you've already put in another one, you can call the registry and report the second chip, and then they will both show up on the horse's record. Believe it or not, there are some horses I've heard from some of the other registries that do chips that have upwards of double-digit chips in them. For whatever reason, they must have really deep neck muscles or something's happening, and they just keep finding more chips. So always double check. That's a good reminder.
Horse is more chip than horse now.
Yeah. So I'm going to jump over to the Jockey Club Jockey Club tip website now and just quickly talk about tip numbers. To apply for a tip number, to find your tip numbers, you're just going to go to this tip listing and maintenance under my account. There's a couple of things on here that I just want to point out. If you already have an interactive registration account, please don't create another one. You won't be able to look up your login information. If you forgot it, you can email us or you can call the registry and ask. You can also use these lookups up here if you forget your username and password. But once you create a duplicate account, unfortunately, those won't work. So if you think you might have already had an account, just email us or call the registry and double check that you don't already have an account. Similarly, don't create another tip number for your horse if you've already got one. Under another account, I'll get people who call me and be like, I forgot my horse's tip number. I'm like, well, you have 3. So here they are. Which one do you want to keep? So I know it's tough to remember all the username and passwords and everything, but it's much easier for us and for you if you've just got the one account and the one horse. Now, if you buy a horse that already has a tip number, they are horse owner specific. Essentially, your tip number is like an account key. So it is specific to you as the owner of a horse. So if you buy a horse that already has a tip number, you do get your horse a new number under your own account. If, say, for example, you were leasing a horse and now you've purchased it and you want to continue to use the same tip number, we can move them from one account to another. But generally, the advice is if you are the new owner, get the horse a number under your own account. And if your trainer is getting you a number or anything like that, just know that you won't be able to log in and record your performance award results or reprint a tip card if your tip number is under someone else's account. So just keep that in mind when you're getting your horse's numbers. It's best that you have your own account and your own number so that you can do what you need with your horse's information. If you need to change your horse's show name, we can do that for you. And you just send us an email with all of this information and then we can get it updated. There is this FAQs, which has some answers to a few other common asked questions. I won't go through them all, but that is another great place to go and find information if you've got questions about your tip numbers or tip cards or need to change something or any of those things. So I'm going to log in using my same IR account that I was under before. And just quickly show you how to apply for a tip number. I'm not going to finish this process because I will then have done the same thing I told you all not to do, which is get your horse another number, but I will at least show you the process. So we'll select him. And then I'm going to just make up a name so that I can show you how this works. So if I wanted to do Franny, oh, she's not there. It's gonna take a minute. So she's not there. So this website is a little bit tricky. So I'm just gonna go ahead and show this. Now that I know that Franny does not have a rider name, I'm gonna hit clear. And then I'm gonna go ahead and add her name and then click next step. I can put my horse's show name, which can be the registered name or a new name that you select. And then I'm going to put myself as the owner. So if I type my last name in here, it will now populate this box and then I can pick myself. And then I would click submit, which I'm not going to. The tricky thing with this is the rider name and the owner name are totally separate. So if you're adding yourself for the first time, only use these boxes down here. Don't use the search box because it will kick you out. And also don't use autofill. This website does not like autofill for some reason. So that's how you get a tip number for your horse. If you need any help with that, we're happy to help. The easiest thing to do is to send me an email with, this is where I'm running into problems, with a screenshot so that I can try to troubleshoot instead of just having to kind of email back and forth and say, what in the world is going on? So let's see.
So, okay, if I have a horse that already has a tip number with me.
Yep.
Now my husband's showing it this year. Does he need a new tip number?
He does not. He will just need to get, I'm going to log in and pretend I'm you since I know your horse has a number. Is that right?
I think so. We'll find out. It's been a year since I've logged into it. I've been a very bad tip participant.
All right, so you got numbers for both your horses. So two things I'll show here. First, you need to add your husband as a rider. So it's on Regal Justice, right?
Yes.
We'll click add rider. And I'm guessing he probably does not have a number yet, but
I don't think he does.
is it Bentley's his last
The
name?
chances of him doing this on his own are.
He probably has his own account and everything. None of those are him.
Nope.
All right, so I'm gonna hit clear, and then we're gonna add, what's his first name?
Eric, E-R-I-K. This is what happens when he goes to the barn and I don't. He gets
You're
signed
like,
up for
you
a
gotta
tip number on a webinar where the whole internet gets to watch.
So now he has been added as a rider on the
All right.
horse. It's
Super
super
easy.
simple to do the add riders.
And then I can just record all his performance entries for him and
Yeah.
not rely on him.
Yeah, so this is the spot to go for performance award entries. You will need to fill out all this information. And if you filled it out before on an annual basis, just check it and make sure it's correct. We get lots of, that's not my address anymore. And I have to say, well, it's because it's still here and that's what I'm using. So just make sure every year when you're filling out your performance award stuff that you update your contact information. We do send everyone who participates in the performance awards a little gift at the beginning of the year. So we want to make sure you get your stuff. For award purposes, we do make you confirm your address before we ship it, but we don't do that with all of the participants just because it would take a really long time.
The awards are great, guys. You should definitely sign up for this if you have a thoroughbred. I have so much swag in this room.
We really like swag. And we like to make sure that everybody who participates gets recognized because I do know, there's lots of horses participating and we try to recognize as many as we can, but ultimately there's lots and lots of horses. But I always tell people, make sure you put your stuff in, even if you don't think that you're going to be competitive, because we continually split out divisions based on participation. So, and for example, like with eventing, at one point we just had beginner, novice, and novice and training, and we had so many horses in those entries, we split them out into zones. So, the bigger a category or a division gets within a category, the more likely we are to pull it out and have it be its own separate division. So keep that in mind. Even if you think, well, I only did like 3 barrel races this year, that's fine. Go ahead and put it in, because if we see that we've got lots of barrel racers, then we can start pulling out zones. This is everyone's least favorite part of performance awards, probably, and that is when I tell them to go here and read all of this. I know it's a lot of information, but for our year-end awards program, there is a lot of information, unfortunately, about what you can record, how to record it, what shows can be included, what points you get, and all of that stuff. So just, give yourself a 30 minutes to go scroll through all of these tabs, and 90% of the answers will probably be somewhere in here. If you still can't find the answer, which I always have every year, somebody needs to know how to record a kind of discipline or a kind of class that I haven't heard of before that year. It's always exciting to see thoroughbreds doing new and cool stuff. So happy to help, but most of the time the answers are here. And then if you want to see
me with all my cow horse stuff.
What do I do?
What do I do with this weird cow class?
There is a list of categories and divisions under here. And as people add new things, I do sometimes try to put notes. So like, for example, intro level dressage east. In Canada, there it's walk trot tests. So I added that to include them in the same because they're equivalent levels. Same thing with our eventers. The low level eventing levels in Canada are different. So it's beginner, novice, or entry, novice, or pre-training, pre-beginner, novice, or pre-entry. So again, as people start asking questions about things, I try to put them on here and make it a little bit easier for folks who are looking for those answers. One thing I will just make sure to point out, because I have to email a lot of people every year, the heights for the hunters and the jumpers are different. So just make sure when you're entering, especially if you enter hunters and jumpers, that you get your heights correct. So hunters are lower generally than the jumpers are. So high hunters are 3 foot and above, whereas high jumpers are 1.2 meters and above. So just keep that in mind. If you've got any questions, as I said, you're welcome to go here and see what stuff is where. And if you can't find it or just want to confirm, feel free to shoot us an email. The one thing too that we also have some people ask about is zones. So we have zones for our a few of our awards. That is here under the details on awards offered. So it just has a list of states and provinces, and that can help you know which zone you're supposed to be in. And that is based on your state of residence at the end of the year. So if you live in New York, but you show in Florida in the winter time, if you're living in New York when you're submitting your performance awards, and that's the address where your stuff is going, and that's where your permanent residence is, you're going to use New York, even if half your shows are in Florida, which in this case, those are both East Coast, so it wouldn't matter. But we do get some people that say, oh, I live in Iowa, but I go to Florida for the winter. So you're still going to use your Iowa address. So that would be central, even if some of the events were in Florida. Same if you cross over and say you live in Kentucky, but you go and show in Colorado a few times, your Kentucky address is going to be what determines your state for purposes of a zone. For those of you that don't show, or maybe that show and also pleasure ride your horse, we also have this recreational riding incentive program. It's essentially an hours in the saddle. You record your hours on a log, send them in, and then we give you prizes. So we've got 25 hours is the first one, goes all the way up to 10,000. We actually just had somebody hit 1,000. I think we've had 2 people hit 1,000 at this point. So that's pretty exciting to see what the thoroughbreds are out there doing. And those are kind of some of my favorite pictures to get. You have to send in a picture with your log, and some of the stuff we get is pretty cool. Lots of mountains and wineries and snowy pictures and cattle working pictures and stuff. So it's pretty cool to see what everyone's doing with their thoroughbreds recreationally. In addition to, some of them are also doing endurance and competitive trail and recording those hours too.
Yeah, that equine trail sports tournament was pretty cool, because I signed up for that and didn't realize that was automatically logged, and I was like, I got a ribbon. I didn't even know anything. It was great. So. Yeah,
so we do have both American Endurance Ride Conference and Equine Trail Sports. We offer year-end awards through them. So if you're doing any AERC or ETS competitions, if you provide your tip number to them, they log all of that information for you, and then send me a list and say, here's all the thoroughbreds, and we pick the winners, and then we do placings. And as Kristen said, for ETS, at least, I think we place the tournament through 6th place. So you get prizes and neck sashes for those. We also have a separate endurance and obstacle trail mileage performance award as well. That's a mileage based award. So it's a little bit different than the competition one, which is points based on placings. So extra stuff for some of the horses doing the competitive trail and endurance stuff. Last thing, if you're looking for a tip show near you, that is under the Thoroughbred Owners and Riders calendar of horse shows. And you can select as few or as many of these as you want. If you're looking for beginner hunter divisions in July in, let's say, New Jersey. Hopefully there's one. So there you can see Delaware Valley Horsemen's Association has that offered. If you don't see awards in your area for your discipline, people often ask, well, what can I do to get them? And the best thing I can do to tell you is tell the horse show personnel to apply for awards. The period to do that is August and September on an annual basis for the next year. So this August and September, we will be taking applications for 2023. I know it seems really early, but essentially all that we need is them to fill out this application that says, I want to have awards. We'll probably have 5 shows next year. They will be hunter jumper shows, and I want to offer these awards. We don't need exact dates or any of that. We just need to know show X wants to have 5 awards at 5 shows for purposes of getting our budget set for the following year. So point them to there. If you're trying to qualify for
management, right?
I'm sorry?
That's free for show management. They don't need to do anything.
Yes, they don't have to, they can apply for free, and then we send awards for free as well. They just have to report results back to us and make sure that the eligible horses are registered thoroughbreds. That's the tip eligibility rule. If you're trying to qualify for championships and can't find a horse show near you, we have you covered with this hardship request. You just have to show your horse at least twice in the discipline that you want to participate in, fill out the form and send it in and we'll review it. And not most, as long as your horse is being shown in the discipline that you want to participate in, those are mostly being approved. Your horse has been off for a year and not been at a horse show and you want championships to be your first show back, more than likely that is not going to be approved. So when we say hardship, it's really just can't find a tip show near me, or couldn't find a tip show in the time period, or my horse is just coming back and the only tip show was 6 months ago, but now he's been showing since. So keep that in mind if you're interested in either of the tip championships. Check out that hardship declaration form. Early submission of those is appreciated. So if you're trying to qualify for the Kentucky show, please don't send it on July 31st. Get those in as soon as possible. It's very much appreciated by the tip staff, which is me. Just quickly,
Previous
all of our
year performance award counts for that. So like, you know, if I send in performance awards for 2021 and I qualify for this.
So if you did the discipline that you want to show in 2021, so in Kristen's example, she did ranch horse stuff. She would be qualified for the 2022 tip championships in the ranch disciplines. And you could probably submit if you wanted to do a Western pleasure, for example, just saying there was no Western pleasure at the shows, but I did these rail classes in ranch horse. So,
and I know we covered a ton more information about this year's tip championships with the makeover in another webinar earlier a couple weeks ago. So if you are here and now have a lot of questions about championships, go back and watch that webinar. You'll find that on our Facebook page as well as our YouTube channel. Just so we don't
lots of information.
Do it again.
Right, I'm gonna stop and share. All right, so that was all I had.
All right. Does anybody have questions? I saw a couple. I think most of the comments were just, I must have put in the wrong Zoom password, so people were having a hard time. So I apologize to anyone who could not find us on Zoom, but I know a lot of people found us on Facebook. So if you guys have more questions about OTTB research, feel free to drop them in the comments now or shoot us an email at info@therrp.org. If you have any tip specific questions or Jockey Club specific questions, where can people contact you, Kristen?
So it's TJC TIP, which is the same as the website. It's just TJC TIP is the initials for the program at jockeyclub.com.
All right. And I noticed you've been sharing a lot of pictures of horses and their swag. So I got to get my guy all decked out in his ribbons and send that to you too. But
yes, we love pictures of tip ribbons, and somebody actually mailed me a printed picture last week, which I was like, real pictures, it's so nice to hold them. So that horse is now proudly displayed on the bulletin board in my office. So.
Oh, nice.
My favorite is when we get declaration forms with pictures of the horses walking them to the mailbox and things like that. So it's very much appreciated when people like their ribbons and are excited about stuff. So
I don't think there's a community quite like the off-track thoroughbred community.
I agree. It's great.
With the most passion about their horses. So hopefully now you guys are all armed with more tools to learn more about your horses. So now you can tell everyone you know exactly where your horse raced and who's his sire and where he was bred, because that's all I do in my daily life. So welcome to the club, folks. All right, guys, if you have any more questions, drop them in the comments. We'll do our best to circle back in a couple of days and try to answer some of those too. But otherwise, hopefully everybody had a good time tonight. Thanks for hanging out with us, and we will see you again for the next one. Bye-bye.
Bye.